Lots to get across today. Joining me now, senior reporter Carolyn Marcus and senior political reporter out of Canberra, Trudy McIntosh. Trudy, we'll start with the fallout from the coalition and the PM, of course, returning from his trip overseas. He addressed what this will mean, in fact, in practical terms, regarding resources for the two parties today. Have a listen.
It is not reasonable that there be more staff or a reward, if you like, for the fact that you have this division has occurred. So we'll give consideration to it, and I'll have discussions with both Susan Ley and David Littleproud about that.
I will say, though, he's quite happy to give the Teals and others additional staff, or has in the past. I don't know what he'll be doing in this parliament. He doesn't need them as much. But I thought it's a damning indictment on the Libs that they're going to have more people sitting on their front bench, Trudy, than they will on their back bench. And apparently, according to Libs I spoke with today, that part of Susan Lee's pitch for the leadership was vote for me and I'll give you a job.
Yeah, this is going to be fascinating to see how this shakes out. We're expecting the new look only Liberal shadow ministry to be announced either tomorrow afternoon, is my mail, or Friday morning if things get delayed. There are moving pieces here, and there hasn't really been any big leaks as to who is going to hold the key portfolios. We don't know who's going to be shadow treasurer, for example. The deputy gets to choose his position, Ted O'Brien, but so far publicly he's been unwilling to countenance whether that's the job he wants or was that promised to someone else as a part of Susan Lee actually shoring up her own numbers. The question mark to me is what happens to Angus Taylor. He has not spoken publicly, as far as I can tell, since losing that leadership race against Susan Lee. Is he given something that looks like an equal job, or is he given something that's essentially what Anthony Albanese did to Tanya Plibersek, a bit of punishment? So I think that'll be fascinating. The numbers are just so tightly balanced in the Liberal party room at the moment. So I think Susan Lee will have that in mind when she allocates these portfolios.
Yeah, just on that point, Trudy, I mean, something like foreign affairs or defence, they sound like important portfolios and they are in government. They're not that important in opposition, but they have a certain cachet. That could be where some of these people go. But interestingly, the people I spoke to today, most of them think that this is possibly the worst of all worlds, and they want to run a mile. I mean, they will probably be prevailed upon to take a job, but they'd rather not, because they think this is a sinking ship and going down fast, and it hasn't even been announced yet. Yeah, what an absolute mess. And we were talking about it earlier today on air with Kieran Gilbert, whether there is some creative solution where you give someone two portfolios, in essence hedging for a world in which the coalition reforms, and then you then have to give the Nationals portfolios back. Susan Lee said when she was asked that she wasn't going to be telling people you are in line to be demoted. Now, that obviously would be pretty difficult to do. So whether there is a workaround where you could give someone two portfolios with the knowledge that one would go to the Nats, what an absolute mess. This has been a rather spectacular week in federal politics. Yeah, I thought of that, Trudy. I thought that's the way you do it. You give them something like trade and industry, let's say, trade traditionally being National Party, or agriculture and industry. But then you've still got the complication. If you max out your 30 spots in the shadow ministry, you haven't got any additional spots. You'd have to take an individual out and put an individual in. It isn't just carving up the portfolios. And of course, you'll get cranky Liberals if you don't have all of those positions filled. Fingers crossed, hoping that the Nats might turn up. I think it's extraordinary. And I also think what's interesting to Caroline are her comments today that she doesn't see this being reformed before the next election. I think that's a mess. And then you've got what happened, or what played out this morning on Breakfast TV, where it's, you know, not just a bit of a trial separation, it looks and sounds like a divorce. Have a look at this.
So get this. We asked Deputy Liberal leader Ted O'Brien on the show last night and he agreed. This morning, out of courtesy, we told him Matt Canavan was coming on too. All seemed okay. And then 20 minutes ago, his team rang saying he won't come on with Canavan. I mean, you can't make it up. It's like maths, the Canberra edition.
It's not often this stuff gets made public. You know, we have these same conversations, as you know, Caroline. We get told a whole lot of stuff before people come on air, but it's not often that's made public, but it was this morning.
That would leave the producers and the hosts struggling in that spot, which traditionally they'd have two people on. They'd planned to have Matt Canavan and Ted O'Brien, and now they're going to have to fill that spot with just one person. So, I mean, that's why Carl's upset about it. And occasionally these things sort of come out, and I think that's always the risk, because it becomes the story and it overshadows anything that you were meant to discuss. I mean, it is like a divorce in a way. It's like when you invite a divorced or separated couple to a family event and one person says, I'm not going if that person's going, and the other person says, I'm not going, and it becomes this whole messy situation. So it doesn't look good. I mean, Ted O'Brien, for his part, has come out and said, look, it wasn't how it appears. I've got no beef with Matt Canavan. My team's got mixed up, but it doesn't. And Matt Canavan said the same, that they're actually mates, but it certainly doesn't appear that way. Not a good look at all.
Not a good look at all. Let's go to the speech from Labor today. That was a good look if you're a Labor supporter, and rightly, I think Paul Erickson should stand there and take a bow. I mean, it was an extraordinary campaign. No one gave them any chance over Christmas to resurrect, not even resurrect for minority government or even a slim majority, but no one would have contemplated the numbers they've got now in the House. It's a record haul for Labor, greater than even Bob Hawke's win, greater than Kevin 07. Erickson can write his own ticket here. Speculation, though, Trudy, that he could go into the seat of Isaacs if Mark Dreyfus, who's been dumped, quits politics.
Yeah, that was the speculation last week. He was asked about that today. I think he made the point, he was asked by Tom Connell about by-elections. Does he have an eye to them? And he said flat out no. Ultimately, though, if he wants to, I'm sure he can be run in federal parliament. But I thought he made a good point today about the actual vocation of working in a party head office. He's clearly done spectacularly well over the last decade in terms of rising up through the ranks. He's a very close confidant of Anthony Albanese, and rightfully so, able to stand there today and talk about where it all went so well for Labor by comparison to Peter Dutton. A fascinating insight, one we don't get to see very often as the public, do we, into how these have worked, what were the internals showing towards the end. A great insight into how this played out.
Yeah, I'm going to pull that speech apart a bit later on, because I think there were some telling insights in there for the Liberal Party in particular. But a messy couple of days of public transport across the country. Listen to this. You know, you go overseas or you go interstate even, you can swipe your debit card to get on and off a tram or a train. Well, not so in Victoria. They've got this clunky old system. They've promised to replace it. Well, we're now told it'll cost another $140 million just to do that, and they're 18 months behind. And in Sydney, you've had absolute chaos on the train system, Caroline. Bad yesterday at peak hour and extending again into today.
Yeah, look, massive delays. Hundreds of people were left stranded, absolute chaos across the network. And it was all because apparently this train's rooftop power connector had become tangled with overhead power lines in the city's inner west. The Premier came out, Chris Minns, and said, look, the government takes full responsibility. This is our fault. We're going to give you a fare free day on Monday to compensate for putting people out. And they were at pains to make it clear that it was the government's fault and not the unions, because earlier in the year, the unions there'd been all this industrial action and we'd had lots of delays then as well. But when you actually look at what happened, because of that earlier industrial action, there was then a backlog in the maintenance schedule, and that seems to be partly to blame as well. Things weren't upgraded or maintained to the levels that they should have been at this time. So I think that probably is partly to blame. And of course, over in Victoria, or what's happening there in your state with the transport system, they're behind a year and a half on this plan to modernise the system in line with most other places, modern cities in the world, including here in Sydney, where you can just tap your credit card on. It's going to cost another $140 million, as you say, another 18 months behind. And it's all part of a broader problem with major projects there that the Allen government has just not budgeted properly for and have completely blown out in time.
Can't run a thing, I have to say. Thank you, ladies. See you both next week.